Hello everyone. So in this video, I'm gonna give an introduction on how to carry out permission management on Alibaba Cloud's Max Compute. So Max Compute is one of the underlying computing engines of Dataworks. So as we have already shown in the previous demos, we have basically built up this digital POC workflow on our Dataworks platform. And although all the codes and all the nodes were sort of like written and deployed on Dataworks, it still runs on the Max Compute engine. And that's why all the tables, including all the temporary tables, will be stored in Alibaba Cloud's Max Compute as well. And a bit more introduction of our environment today. So for today's demonstration, we have created two accounts. So one of the accounts is the one that I'm showing at the moment. It is the administrator's account. So it can basically have the overall control of the project. And the other one is the user's account. It basically have no permission and have been granted sort of like no rights to access the project at the moment. Okay, so let's get started. So first, let's switch to our user's account and let's see if any sort of random user try to query on our project, what would happen. Yeah, and here, as it's shown in the arrow information, it says access denied, authorization failed. You have no privilege, something on this project. And that means the user has no permission to access anything inside of the project. So the first thing is that we'll need to add the user into this project. So let's run this line of code and add that user into our current project. And after this row has been properly processed, let's try running this query again. And this time there is still error, but we can see that there is a bit of difference between this time and the previous time. Here it basically shows that you have no privilege ODPS select on this project. And that means although this user is added to the project, but we haven't granted the user any rights to carry out any sort of query on the project at all. So here we'll need to grant some access to our user as well. So we would basically grant select and describe access on this specific table that we will be showing our demo on today to this user's account. So let's run this line of code. Okay, so now let's try running this line of code again. And perfect, we'll be able to access the whole table right now. So another feature that I would like to showcase to you is how we manage permission using labels in Max Compute. So in Max Compute, we have this labeling system where we will grant label 0 to the least sensitive data and label 4 to the most sensitive data. So if any table was granted label 0, that means any user who have access to the project will directly have access to the table as well. And if we granted any table with label 4, that means it stores the highest level of sensitivity of it stores the most sensitive data. And here in this case, we are setting this table with label 2. Okay, so after we have set this table with label 2, let's try running this line of code again and see what would happen. And here, as we can see, it has appeared an arrow saying that the sensitivity of column something is 2, but like this user does not have the label 2 of sort of like access right. So the next step that we are going to do is to grant the same level of permission right to this user so that it will be able to sort of like query some part of the table. So let's probably don't grant the whole sort of like table access to the user, but like only granting one of the columns to this user and see what would happen. So here we have granted this customer IDs column to this user. So that means it will only be able to query the customer's IDs column. So let's try querying the whole table again. Yeah, it shows error again, but let's see if we try to sort of like query for only the specific column that it has access right to. And perfect, it will be able to sort of like query the whole column that it has the access right. Okay, and another feature that I would like to demonstrate is to sort of like create role access policy for a specific user. So in Max Compute, we can control our permission access rights down to role level. So right now, let's say if we only want this user to query only this role where our customer ID equals this one, and what would happen? So let's try running this line of code. Okay, and after creating this role access policy and binding to this user, let's see what would happen if this user still tries to query the table. And we'll see that it will only be able to query the line of role that we have granted access to this user. Okay, so after all these, if we want to remove the label from the table, we'll just have to set label 0 to this table, and then it will be able to be accessed by any user who has access to the project. Let's try running this line of code again. Okay, perfect. So the whole table will be accessible to this user again. And another feature that I would like to demonstrate to you is to control permission using role access policy. So here we have created a role access policy on this table to basically specify that this user can only sort of like access this role where the customer ID equals to this specific one. So let's try running this code and see what would happen. Okay, now and let's try to query the whole table again. We can see that it will only be able to query this row of the table. Okay, now for the next part, what we are going to demonstrate is how to set up a data masking policy and mask our sensitive data. So right now, let's try querying the table with our accounts. Yeah, and we can see that it can still query everything in the table at the moment without we apply any sort of data masking policy onto it. And what we're going to do is that we are going to apply this data masking policy to our users' accounts. We named it as masking test 006, and we have been using this masking strategy. So we have actually got like more than 20 data masking policies on Max Compute, and this one is masking part of the data inside of the table into default values. So let's create this rule. And then what we're going to do is to bind this data masking policy onto this person birthdays value of our customer dimensions table. So what it will do is to make the person birthday into a default value. So let's see what would happen. Yeah, so right now we can see that it still shows up the normal value on our person birthdays column. And if we try to query the table again, yeah, it will basically just show the default value.